Now it's officially fall, and as luck would have it, the topic of Volume 14 involves ghosts and phantoms, sort of. Volume 14 is dedicated almost exclusively to Lenin's philosophical work, Materialism and Empirio-Criticism. The book is a complex deep dive into Western philosophy, probing the questions of objectivity versus subjectivity, solipsism versus the world outside of us. Now, I am by no means a philosopher, so I can't pretend to have a deep knowledge of Kant and Hume to pull from when I'm discussing Lenin's reading of them. However, I can place this work in historical time and outline the basic premise of the work. Written in the early 20th century and published in 1909, Lenin wrote Materialism and Empirio-Criticism, critical comments on a reactionary philosophy as a response to Russian Marxists like Vladimir Bazarov, Alexander Bogdanov, and Anatoly Lunacharsky, who shared an interest in the philosophy of Austrian philosopher Ernst Mach. These Machists, as Lenin called them, argued that things are complexes of sensations, not things outside of us, which Lenin considered subjective idealism. The truth is that Marxism and materialists like Lenin were responding to new insights from the material sciences, the natural sciences, and neurology to make arguments about the relationship between our sensory experience of things and, quote, things in themselves. The context is key. In the early 20th century, the natural sciences saw massive breakthroughs in biology, genetics, and earth sciences. People began to prove, without a doubt, that the world existed before humans. This sounds like a trivial development, but in reality, it threw new light on the age old philosophical debate between materialists and idealists. Lenin lays out the contours of the debate clearly by stating that, quote, the difference between materialism and Marxism in this particular question thus consists in the following. Materialism, in full agreement with natural sciences, takes matter as primary and regards consciousness, thought, sensation as secondary because its well defined form, sensation, is associated only with the higher forms of matter, organized matter, while, quote, in the foundation of the structure of matter, one can only surmise the existence of a faculty akin to sensation. Thus, the objective knowledge that life existed before humans proves the materialist worldview without a doubt. Lenin says, quote, matter is primary in thought, consciousness, sensation, products of a very high development, such as the materialist theory of knowledge to which natural science instinctively subscribes. He adds that, quote, the chemical substances produced in the bodies of plants and animals remain just such things in themselves until organic chemistry began to produce them one after another, whereupon the thing in itself became a thing for us. This proves, according to Lenin, that knowledge emerges dialectically. Yesterday, we didn't know that coal contains alarazen, but now we do. So the question is, did it always? The materialist says, yes, of course, things exist outside of us. Lenin proves himself to be a good dialectician in this work in the way that it's organized. While knowledge itself, Lenin sees the history of philosophy developing dialectically over time, beginning with the earliest debates about the nature of sensations and their relationship to the Kantian thing in itself. He moves through Engels' own engagement with the question and those who debated him up to the Russian Machists. Considering the difference between this work and those that came before it, we must ask why Lenin thought the issue was important enough to tackle in an entire monograph. If Marxists deviated from an orthodox historical dialectical materialist concept of reality, then it threw open the door for interpretations about not just being, time, space, but politics and history itself. At stake for Lenin in this volume is the critical idea that knowledge is fully knowable, that there is an objective truth that exists outside of the subjective self. If that truth was objective, then it meant that the observations and sensations, including that of oppression, immiseration, and poverty, were really felt and experienced and not just observed. The logical conclusion of a world that is subjective is that suffering is not felt by those outside of my consciousness. This is a major mistake, an un-Marxist deviation from dialectical materialism, and a trend in Russian Marxists that desperately needed to be addressed before it got out of hand. Another major question Lenin engages with in this volume of is the question of causality. According to Lenin, Mach and his idealist predecessors, going back all the way to Kant, refuted the idea of causality because if a basic Kantian premise is that man dictates the laws of nature, that means that he is the creator of reality. By contrast, the materialists believe in causality because they put nature as primary, believing that the seasons change, for example, regardless of our individual existence. The definite laws of nature existing outside of us suggest that phenomena can be linked causally. This is a huge point for fields in the social sciences today, which have been encouraged in the academy to avoid over reliance on causal arguments. We can see here that the challenge to causality is a political one because it refutes the idea that events unfold by necessity. In the end, Lenin says there are 4 points from which Marxists should judge empirio-criticism. One, it should be compared to materialism to see that empirio-criticism is reactionary because it merely uses new terms to disguise old philosophy of idealism and agnosticism. Two, placing empirio-criticism in relation to the new trends of Mach exposes their move towards idealism. Three, the new natural sciences are firmly on the side of materialists, with a few exceptions where the theory of relativity is slipping into idealism due to their ignorance of dialectics. Four, the antagonism between these parties of philosophy reflects political antagonism between the classes. Imperial criticism lends service to the faithful's struggle against materialism in general and historical materialism in particular. Thanks for listening. Until next time.